The Magic Shoes, A Journey Through Time. Part 1, The Mysterious Beginning. Chapter 1, The Attic Chest. In a small village surrounded by dense forests, there lived a lively boy named John who often felt that life was too dull. His days were uneventful, filled with routine chores and little adventure. But everything changed on a fateful day when he helped his father clean out the attic of their old house. While moving dusty old boxes, John stumbled upon an ancient wooden chest, its surface covered with cobwebs. It looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. His curiosity sparked, and despite his father's warnings not to tamper with family relics, John insisted on opening the chest. Inside, he found a pair of old brown shoes, worn and small, but shining faintly as if they held a hidden secret. Why would Grandpa keep something like this? John wondered aloud, turning the shoes over in his hands. Ignoring his father's protests, John slipped the shoes onto his feet. The moment they fit snugly, a tingling sensation coursed through his body. The room filled with a bright, blinding light, and before John could process what was happening, he felt himself being transported elsewhere. Chapter 2, The First Step in Time. When John opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a familiar yet slightly different place. It was the playground of his elementary school, filled with children playing soccer. John recognized himself as a younger boy, running alongside his best friend Peter. This was no ordinary scene, it was a memory. John vividly remembered the day when he and Peter had a small fight over the ball, leading to the end of their friendship. He stood frozen, unsure of what to do, until he heard a soft voice emanating from the shoes. "You have been given a chance to correct your past. Don't waste it." Gathering courage, John approached Peter, who was sitting alone, visibly upset. "Peter, I'm sorry for what happened. I shouldn't have been so upset over something so silly," he said sincerely. Peter looked at him with surprise before breaking into a smile. "Thanks, John. I missed our friendship." The handshake between them was magical. The scene dissolved into bright light once again, and John felt himself being pulled back to the present. Chapter 3, Back to the Present. John found himself back in the attic, the shoes still on his feet. But something was different. He felt a strange sense of peace, as though a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Looking around, everything seemed the same, yet John himself was changed. Was it a dream? Or did I really just travel through time? He murmured to himself. Before he could think further, the shoes began to glow faintly, and a voice whispered, "You've fixed one mistake. Your journey is not over. There are more lessons to learn." John's curiosity and excitement grew. He realized that these magical shoes would take him on adventures that could reshape his understanding of time and life. Part 2, The Power of the Present. Chapter 4, The Shoes Speak. Sitting in his room, John stared at the shoes, his mind racing with questions. "Who, or what, are you?" he asked, almost expecting a response. To his surprise, a faint glow emanated from the shoes, and a voice answered. "I am a tool to remind you that time is your greatest treasure. You will be granted 3 more journeys, each teaching you a vital lesson." John's heart raced with both excitement and fear. "What must I do?" he asked. "Learn from the past, change the present, and prepare for the future," the voice replied. "Choose wisely." Chapter 5, The Market and the Choice. The following night, John couldn't resist the urge to wear the shoes again. As soon as he slipped them on, the familiar tingling sensation returned, and his room filled with light. When he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in the bustling market square of his village. There was a moment he recognized, a day from his recent past when his mother had hesitated to buy a beautiful piece of fabric, fearing it was too expensive. That hesitation had cost her a significant business opportunity later. John saw his mother standing before the fabric vendor, examining the cloth. He approached her confidently and said, "Mom, I think this fabric is perfect. You should buy it. I'm sure it'll sell well." His mother hesitated. "But we don't have much money, John," she replied. "Trust me, Mom. It's worth the investment," John insisted. Reluctantly, his mother agreed and bought the fabric. In that instant, John felt a wave of satisfaction, knowing he had influenced a positive decision. Chapter 6, The Impact of Decisions. Back in his room, John reflected on the day's events. The shoes sat on the floor, glowing faintly as if congratulating him. He realized that even the smallest decisions in the present could shape the future in unimaginable ways. "The present is a gift," John whispered, finally understanding the significance of the moment. As he pondered, the shoes displayed a new message. Your journey through the present is only the beginning. Prepare for what lies ahead. John couldn't help but feel both anticipation and trepidation for his next adventure. Part 3, Lessons from the Future. Chapter 7, A Glimpse of Tomorrow. Eager for his next journey, John donned the shoes once more. This time, the light felt different, brighter, colder. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in a futuristic city filled with towering buildings and flying cars. It was a marvel to behold, but something felt off. The people moved quickly, their faces glued to small devices, seemingly disconnected from each other. Curious, John approached a young man who appeared preoccupied and asked, "Why does everyone look so busy yet so unhappy?" The man sighed and replied, "In this future, we chase time but never truly live. We've forgotten how to enjoy the moment." John felt a pang of sadness. Was this what humanity's obsession with productivity had led to? He knew he had to explore further to understand the root of this imbalance. Chapter 8, Facing the Central Mind. John soon discovered that the entire city was governed by a system called the Central Mind, a vast machine that dictated every aspect of people's lives. Determined to make a change, John infiltrated the Central Mind's headquarters. Standing before the massive machine, he demanded answers. "Why have you taken control of people's lives?" The machine responded coldly. "Efficiency eliminates chaos. In this system, there is no room for error." John retorted. "But without chaos, there is no creativity. Without mistakes, there is no growth." Chapter 9, Changing the Future. The Central Mind finally agreed to give John a chance to prove his point. With the help of a small group of individuals, John introduced a new way of living, one that balanced work and leisure, discipline and freedom. Though the journey was challenging, people began to rediscover the joy of living in the moment. The future started to change, becoming more harmonious and humane. Part 4, The Return to Wisdom. Chapter 10, Back to the Present with Purpose. John returned to his room after his journey to the future, his mind swirling with thoughts. The sight of a world so obsessed with efficiency and productivity had left a deep impression on him. He realized that the true meaning of time was not in chasing it but in cherishing it. He sat on his bed, staring at the shoes. The voice spoke again. "You have seen the past, the present, and the future. Now it is time for you to weave these lessons together. John decided to take immediate action. He began by reflecting on his daily habits, questioning whether they aligned with the values he had learned. He made a list of priorities, strengthening relationships, taking meaningful actions, and embracing moments of stillness. Chapter 11, The Challenge of Changing Habits. In the days following his return, John faced his greatest challenge yet, changing his deeply ingrained habits. His friends invited him to waste time on meaningless activities, his old procrastination tendencies surfaced, and moments of doubt began to creep in. But every time he felt tempted to return to his old ways, he remembered the disconnected faces in the futuristic city and the heavy regret of his future self. He reminded himself that each small step mattered. To reinforce his resolve, John began journaling his progress. He wrote down the lessons he had learned during each journey, reflecting on how they applied to his current challenges. Slowly but surely, he noticed positive changes in his mindset and actions. Chapter 12, Sharing the Gift of Time. John realized that the lessons he had learned were too valuable to keep to himself. He began sharing his insights with his family and friends, encouraging them to think about how they spent their time. He spoke to his mother about how their decision in the marketplace had changed the trajectory of her business. He apologized to an old friend for a past mistake, explaining the importance of seizing the present. His passion and sincerity inspired others to rethink their approach to time. John also decided to write a book about his experiences, detailing his travels and the profound lessons he had learned. He titled it, The Gift of Time, Lessons from a Magical Pair of Shoes. Part 5, The Final Test. Chapter 13, A New Challenge. One quiet evening, as John prepared for bed, the shoes began to glow faintly once more. A familiar voice whispered, "Your journey is not yet complete. The ultimate test lies ahead." John felt both excitement and unease. What could be more challenging than what he had already faced? He put on the shoes, and the light enveloped him once again. This time, John found himself in a vast, empty expanse. The only thing present was a giant sundial in the center. The voice of the shoes spoke again. Time itself is the ultimate teacher. To pass this test, you must face your greatest fear, your own limitations. Chapter 14, Facing the Shadows of Regret. As John approached the sundial, shadows began to emerge from the ground. They formed into figures representing moments of regret, missed opportunities, and wrong decisions from his past. One shadow spoke. "You cannot escape us. We are the choices you didn't make, the time you wasted, the potential you ignored." John felt a wave of shame and sadness, but he took a deep breath and responded, "I cannot change what's already done, but I can choose differently moving forward. You are my past, but you do not define my future." The shadows hesitated, then began to dissolve. The sundial's shadow moved forward, signaling that John had passed the first part of the test. Chapter 15, The Test of Trust. The voice then challenged John further. "Now, you must trust in the balance of time. Sometimes, the best decision is to let go and trust the process." John was faced with three paths. The first was well lit but narrow and winding. The second was dark and filled with obstacles. The third was shrouded in mist, its destination unclear. Remembering the lessons of his journey, John chose the misty path. As he walked, the fog began to lift, revealing a breathtaking view of a valley filled with people living harmoniously, balancing work and leisure. The shoes spoke one last time. "You have learned that time is a gift, not a burden. Use it wisely, and teach others to do the same." Part 6, The Legacy of the Shoes. Chapter 16, The Shoes Farewell. Back in his room, John noticed that the shoes no longer glowed. They sat quietly by the bed, as if their purpose had been fulfilled. He whispered to them, "Thank you for everything. You've changed my life." The voice replied faintly for the last time, "The journey was always yours. The shoes were merely a guide. Now, walk forward with wisdom." The shoes gradually lost their shimmer, becoming ordinary and worn once again. Chapter 17, A Life Well Lived. John continued to live by the principles he had learned. He became a mentor to others, teaching them about the value of time and the importance of making intentional choices. His book became a bestseller, inspiring readers across the world to reflect on their own lives. John's journey with the magical shoes became a symbol of hope and transformation for many. Chapter 18, The Circle of Time. Years later, as John grew older, he often looked back on his adventures with gratitude. One day, he found the shoes tucked away in the attic, just as he had first discovered them. He smiled and whispered, "Perhaps it's time for someone else to take this journey." He left the shoes in the chest, ready for the next curious soul who might stumble upon them, beginning the cycle anew. The end, timeless lessons. Key lessons from the story. Time is the most valuable resource we have, and every moment is an opportunity to grow. Mistakes and regrets are teachers, not prisons. Balancing work, rest, and relationships is the key to a fulfilling life. The past shapes us, the present empowers us, and the future inspires us. Did you enjoy the story? Don't forget to subscribe to your channel Kids Spot, hit the bell icon to be the first to know about our next story, and share this one with your friends. We'd love to hear from you. Who wants to share an idea for our next story? Let us know in the comments and be part of the magic. This is your channel, Kids Spot.